This video is sponsored by harderstripesclothing.com. If you want clean, rugged gear that looks good on camera and in real life, go check them out at harderstripesclothing.com. What's good, family? Welcome back to Chronic. This is part 3 of our 3-part breakdown of Monarch Legacy of Monsters Season 1. And this is the part where the show stops tiptoeing and starts slamming doors. Before we jump in, do me a favor real quick. Like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with somebody who watches Monarch, Godzilla, or anything MonsterVerse. Sharing is the cheat code. That's how new people find the channel, and that's how we keep these breakdown series rolling without me having to fight the algorithm like it's a titan. All right, part 3, the final stretch, the payoff. And I'm going to say this up front. Part 3 is where you realize Monarch is not just a secret organization. Monarch is a mindset. Monarch is a philosophy. Monarch is a machine that will protect itself first, explain itself never, and call it for the greater good. Meanwhile, the people caught in the middle are getting folded like lawn chairs. So we pick up with Kate, Kentaro, and May deep in the mess. No more curiosity vibes, no more. Let's just investigate and see what happens. By now, they're in the kind of situation where every decision has a cost, and every cost is emotional, physical, or both. Kate is still the emotional engine of the modern timeline. She's carrying trauma from the 2014 incident. She's carrying betrayal from her father's double life, and now she's carrying the stress of being monitored and manipulated. Kate's not calm. Kate's not composed. Kate is trying to function while her brain is screaming, and the show makes that real. She's not a superhero. She's a survivor running on fumes. Kentaro is trying to be the glue, but glue has limits. Kentaro is the type to try to keep things reasonable, to keep the team talking, to keep decisions from turning reckless. But part 3 pushes him to his edge because he's realizing there's no clean path. Every path is dirty. Every option feels like a trap. And the more he learns about his father, the more it feels like he's chasing a person who might not have ever existed the way he imagined. Now, May. Let's talk about May. Part 3 is where the show makes you stop treating May like just a tech person and start treating her like the wild card she really is. May's past and her true motives become more relevant, and the tension between her and the others gets real. Because here's the reality. When a group is under stress, secrets don't stay hidden. Secrets start leaking. And when secrets leak, trust gets ugly. And that's what happens. The trio's dynamic starts cracking. People start looking at each other like liabilities. Are you with us or are you with Monarch? Are you helping or are you using us? Are you telling the truth or are you telling me the version that keeps you safe? That's the vibe. And Monarch is right there, hovering, waiting for the team to fracture. Because Monarch doesn't always need to overpower you directly. They can just apply pressure and let distrust do the rest. Now, in this final stretch, Monarch's behavior becomes clearer. Monarch is not operating like a science organization. They're operating like an intelligence agency, containment, access control, narrative control, isolation. In some scenes, it feels like Monarch is more afraid of information getting out than they are Titans showing up. And if that's true, ask yourself why. Because Titans are dangerous, sure, but Titans are obvious, Titans are public, Titans are a spectacle. You can explain Titan damage as natural disaster. You can blame it on chaos, but information can expose negligence. Information can expose manipulation. Information can expose the fact that Monarch has been making choices behind the scenes for decades, and those choices have consequences. So Monarch treats truth like a threat. That's the real horror of the show. The monsters can destroy cities. Monarch can destroy lives quietly. Now we have to talk about the past timeline, because part 3 is where the past timeline stops feeling like cool lore and starts becoming the key that unlocks everything. The past timeline has been building the origin of Monarch through Bill Randa, Keiko Mura, and Lee Shaw. We've watched these people discover things, chase leads, survive dangerous situations, and slowly realize they are standing at the edge of something bigger than human understanding. But part three makes it personal. Part three forces the past characters into decisions that shape the future, not in a vague way, in a direct, this is why a modern monarch behaves like this way. Bill Randa's obsession becomes more intense. Rand is the type of person who sees a locked door and feels insulted. He doesn't take no well, especially not from the universe. And his obsession is understandable because imagine living in a world where everyone is telling you reality is one way, but you keep finding evidence that reality is bigger, darker, stranger. That would drive anybody crazy or determined or both. Keiko remains one of the most important characters because she represents the truth matters side. She's not in this for glory. She's not in this for ego. She's in this because discovery changes everything and somebody needs to be responsible about it. And Lee Shaw is the heart of the past timeline, especially in part three. Shaw's story in the final stretch is where you start seeing the full weight of being a monarch asset, not just an employee, not just a soldier, an asset. The system uses you. The system relies on you. The system shapes you. And then the system expects you to carry the weight forever and call it duty. That's Shaw. And what makes Shaw compelling is that he isn't purely one thing. He's not purely loyal, not purely rebellious. He's a human being trying to survive inside a machine. He makes choices that feel protective and choices that feel questionable. He's a character that makes you ask, if I lived his life, would I be any different? Now, part three also leans harder into the show's biggest, bigger than monsters concept, the hollow earth, and the idea that the world underneath the world changes the rules. This is where things get spicy because the show has been hinting that titans don't just come from nowhere. There are pathways, there are openings, there are zones where the boundary between worlds feels thin. And part three starts treating those zones like more than just physical spaces. The show starts playing with the idea that when you cross into that deeper realm, time and space don't behave normally. And that's when Monarch stops feeling like an organization in a realistic world and starts feeling like an organization trying to manage something mythic. This is also why the show's pacing works better than people give it credit for. Because if you rush into the weirdness without building the human stakes, the weirdness feels like random sci-fi. But Monarch spends a whole season building the emotional and institutional stakes so that when the weirdness shows up, you feel it as a threat, not as a gimmick. Now, let's talk about what happens emotionally in the modern timeline as the season approaches the finish. Kate is forced to confront the reality that Hiroshi's choices weren't just dad being secretive. Hiroshi's choices shaped everyone around him. His double life didn't just affect Kate emotionally, it created two separate worlds for his children. And then Monarch's secrecy basically poured gasoline on that split. Kentaro is forced to accept that finding Hiroshi might not bring peace. It might bring more questions. It might bring more danger. And that's one of the most realistic things the show does. Because in real life, people chase closure like it's a prize, but closure isn't always real. Sometimes you get answers and feel worse. Sometimes you learn the truth and it doesn't heal you. Sometimes the truth just changes the shape of the pain. May in part three becomes even more complicated because now her secrets and her actions matter in ways they didn't earlier. And without dragging this too long, this is the stretch where you start understanding why she moves the way she moves. May is not just shady for fun. May moves like someone who learned that systems don't forgive, systems don't forget, systems don't let you walk away clean. And if you've ever been on the wrong side of a system, you know exactly what I mean. You don't just explain yourself and get peace. You explain yourself and now you're on a list. So May's guarded nature makes more sense, but also being understandable doesn't make you trustworthy. And that's what the trio has to deal with. Understanding doesn't automatically rebuild trust. Now, the finale stretch tightens everything into one message. The truth is dangerous, and Monarch will do whatever it takes to keep the truth contained. And here's what part three does really well: it turns the season into a question of control. Who controls the narrative? Who controls access? Who controls knowledge? Who controls survival? The Titans might control the physical world when they appear, but Monarch is trying to control the human world all the time. And the show is basically saying, even if you survive a Titan, can you survive what Monarch does afterward? That's the question. Now, I want to talk about the feel of the season's conclusion in a way that helps you explain it to your viewers without getting lost. Season one doesn't end like everything is solved. It ends like you are now deep enough in the truth that you can't go back. That's the vibe. It's the classic, congratulations, you found answers. Now you're in danger. And from a franchise standpoint, that makes sense. Monarch is part of the monster verse, so it's never going to fully wrap up like a small limited series. It needs to keep doors open. It needs to keep mystery alive, but it still gives you payoff where it counts. It pays off the idea that the past matters. It pays off the idea that Monarch secrecy has roots. It pays off the idea that the world under the world changes everything. It pays off the emotional fractures in the modern trio. And it pays off the theme that legacy can be a curse. Because the title isn't just cute. Legacy of Monsters isn't only referring to Titans, it's also referring to the legacy of human choices, the legacy of secrecy, the legacy of fear, the legacy of institutions that believe they have the right to decide what everyone else can handle. That's the monster too. Now, if we're breaking this down in chronic style, we have to be real about what this show is doing with its audience. It's baiting you with Titans, but feeding you character and conspiracy. Some fans love that, some fans hate that. But if you watch Monarch as a suspense thriller inside the monsterverse, it works. The Titans become the stakes in the background. The humans become the emotional engine. Monarch becomes the villainous force of control. And the Hollow Earth becomes the doorway to bigger mythology. Now let's do a quick part three recap in simple terms, because some people get lost in the timeline shifts and the constant secrecy. Part three is where the investigation turns into survival. The trio is no longer just searching. They are being shaped by the search. They lose innocence, they lose trust, they lose the idea that truth will fix everything. And they begin to understand that Monarch doesn't just hide information, Monarch reshapes lives. The past timeline stops being background. It becomes a direct explanation for why Monarch exists and why Monarch behaves like a paranoid machine. And the show leans fully into the fact that the monsterverse isn't just big monsters, it's big systems, big secrets, big consequences. So when part three ends, you're left with that feeling like, okay, we're not done, we're just deeper. Now, let me give you the exact chronic take that hits hardest for your audience. This season is basically asking, what's scarier? A giant monster you can see coming, or a government connected organization that decides what you're allowed to know, then uses your life as collateral? Because at least with a Titan, the threat is honest. With Monarch, the threat is paperwork, surveillance, and the quiet ability to erase you from the story. And that's why Monarch is compelling. It's not just monster content, it's about control. Now, before we close, I want you to think about the trio's journey across the season. Kate starts as a survivor trying not to feel. She ends as someone forced to feel everything at once. Kentaro starts as someone trying to stay normal. He ends realizing normal might never be available to him again. May starts as the helpful outsider. She ends as someone whose own past matters just as much as the mystery they're chasing. And Hiroshi, even when he's not on screen, is the gravity. Everything pulls toward him. And the show's biggest strength is that it makes a missing person feel present. Hiroshi's absence is loud. His absence shapes every conversation, every decision, every risk. And Monarch remains consistent the entire season. Monarch does not apologize. Monarch does not confess. Monarch adapts. Monarch contains. Monarch protects the institution above all. That's why they're terrifying. So that's part 3. The wrap, the payoff, the end of season 1. Now, if you've been rocking with this trilogy, do me a favor one more time. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with one friend. One share. That's it. That's how we grow this thing and keep the chronic breakdowns coming. And I want you to comment this simple and clean. Who was the real monster in this season? A, the Titans. B, Monarch. C, the secrets. Drop A, B, or C. No paragraphs, just A, B, or C. This video is sponsored by HarderStripesClothing.com. Go check them out at HarderStripesClothing.com. And again, make sure you like, subscribe, and share to help the channel grow. We'll be back with the next Chronic Run.